He was hailed as the person who would usher in a new era in British politics. 10 years later, he's left office with his tail between his legs. Next on Salt TV. After 10 years in office, Tony Blair stumbles battered and bruised out of number 10 Downing Street, a shadow of the bright, exuberant and personable young man who a decade ago was hailed as the person who would usher in a new era in British politics. Blair's reign began after a resounding victory in elections in 1997, through which he became the youngest British Prime Minister of the 20th century, and with guns a-blazing, he set about reforming politics in Britain. He took on the mantra of economic efficiency, which of course the Conservative Party had held dear, and he allied it with the Labour Party mantra of social justice to form New Labour. Now it must be pointed out that before the Iraq War, everything started out quite brightly for Tony Blair, who, unlike his friend across the Atlantic, is still seen as a man who at times was a very capable leader. His leadership was instrumental when the historic Good Friday Agreement was signed on April 10, 1998. This agreement gave an equal share of power to both sides in Ireland and allowed citizens of Ireland to decide their own future. Blair was fast garnering himself a reputation as a first-class negotiator. In 1999, the Albanian Muslim population of Kosovo was suffering under the brutal dictatorship of Slobodan Milosevic. So Tony Blair, along with US President at the time Bill Clinton, combined with NATO forces to launch an aerial assault in and around the Serbian capital of Belgrade. This action eventually led to the capture of Slobodan Milosevic and to the partial restoration of peace in the region. This liberation mission was deemed to be a success within the international community, and on reflection over Blair's career, is seen by many as his finest hour in the political arena. Now, we come to the cloud that looms large over Tony Blair's legacy: Iraq. When he agreed to stand shoulder to shoulder with the US and help George W. Bush fight his war in Iraq, Blair's popularity sank in the minds of the British public when the bodies of British soldiers started to come back to their homeland, and with them came the news that neither Blair nor his best friend George W. fully understood the situation in Iraq. While Blair loyalists tried and ultimately failed to pin the blame for the failings in Iraq on their ne'er-do-well partners in the US, it was Blair's decision to send British soldiers to the region, and his decision has ultimately put more people in harm's way, not only in Iraq, but also in his own country. When he decided to become a partner in the criminal invasion of Iraq, Blair instantly became a target of immense criticism from all corners of the globe. Millions of people turned out in anti-war rallies across England in March of 2003, when the decision was made to send coalition troops into Iraq. It was from that moment on that the once effervescent charm of Tony Blair began to fade in the eyes of the British public, who are now ready to embrace a new leader, and one whom they hope will be able to extricate them from the horrors of Iraq and guide them safely into an era of peace.
I've heard the need for change. Change in our NHS, change in our schools, change with affordable housing, change to build trust in government, change to protect and extend the British way of life. And this need for change cannot be met by the old politics.
There is a massive job to be done before people in Britain will feel safe again, as the latest incidents in Glasgow and London show. But as we pay close attention to modern-day, post-Blair Britain, the important question will be, how will the new Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, repair the damage done within the Islamic community by his fellow Scot? Now, as the fanfare recedes and Blair leaves office, sullen-faced and still bruised from the battering of the vocal majority of the British public, You may ask yourself, where will Blair go now? Surely he will try and keep a low profile, maybe play some golf, get started on that book he's always wanted to read. Well, don't worry, you'll still be seeing plenty of this man on the world stage.
No one can accuse Tony Blair of looking for the easy life, on his way to give up his super safe seat in Parliament in order to take the violence of the Middle East on his shoulders as the world's peace envoy between Israelis and Palestinians.
Yes, after his incredibly poor decision-making in Iraq, Tony Blair is to be sent to the most volatile region in the world, the Middle East. There, Blair will act as a special envoy, working on behalf of the UN, Russia, the US and the EU. His task will be able to mobilize aid and support development for the Palestinians.
But many ordinary Palestinians are deeply hostile. They accuse Mr. Blair of wrecking Iraq, always siding with President Bush, and of prolonging Israel's invasion of Lebanon last year.
I think Blair is biased to Israel and neglect the rights of Palestinians.
He used to be a leader of Britain and he didn't do anything for the Palestinians.
It does, unfortunately for Blair, seem as if his next outing is somewhat of a kamikaze mission. Really, what are Palestinians to make of the man who once supported Israeli strikes in Lebanon, now being in charge of helping them gain freedom from under Israeli occupation? Palestinians will no doubt see Blair as a Trojan horse, masking American policy behind his charming personality and superior negotiating skills. For Blair, however, this venture could decide ultimately how history views him. If Blair does manage to broker a fair deal for the Palestinians, as he did in Ireland, it could save a reputation which, despite early promise, has been dragged through the mud by an ill-conceived road trip with his American ally. His job now is to wash that mud off and clean the chaotic mess that his policies have helped to create. For Soul TV, I'm Robert Edwards.